Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the T.O.A podcast. I am your host, Onvermel. Greeted here again by Zakta. Good evening, good day, salutations, hello, and sup.
Well, I think that just about covers it.
So, thanks for everybody listening. This is a great podcast, good talk, and we'll catch you next time. Return from the night and all that good stuff.
And all the goodbye farewells.
But besides all that, announcement, we have officially broken 100 subscribers. And as of at least last time we checked about 10 minutes ago, we were at 104 subscribers.
We missed the window.
No. So basically for those viewers, the burying the Unua in the dirt will be happening very soon. So when this comes out, there's a good chance I will have the Unua video probably within the next week or so. So if you want to see a bonkel buried in the dirt, look forward to that. I have plans to film that. Well, we've been over 100 subscribers for most of the weekend, I think, at least since Saturday.
You would know better than I don't keep close tabs on your channel.
So I had plans to basically film that video the day that this goes out, and then, do it. I have to do it in my brother's in the ex backyard, so gotta wait. You can't just go randomly there at any given time.
Park, go to a graveyard. It's quite appropriate there.
Yes. We knew him well. His friends and family are not here today.
We will even put a little grave marker just for him.
Yes. I was going to say, though, now that we've reached that milestone, if people are curious, the next milestone that I'm going to be going for will be basically the first video to reach 1,000 views. Now, I don't mean one that's been crawling for 2 years because the tier list is past 900, Stand Prime, but those have been up for a while. I mean one that's got 1,000 views within a reasonably short amount of time. One, essentially a video that blows up, where it's wow, it's got 1K views in a month or something. It'll be to my discretion. And if I do that, I will probably... I think that one is Gally's going to be thrown in the pond or something. Gally will meet her demise to water somehow.
You don't want to just throw Leo in the air?
No, that'll be for something else. But Gally will either get buried in water, drowned in water, something. I'm not sure exactly how, but that'll be in case I ever hit 1,000 views on a video in a short amount of time. But all that out of the way, don't want people waiting too long to actually get to the meat of the podcast.
There's meat?
You're right, there's no meat. It's just plastic.
I'm out.
There's just plastic to this podcast. But I figured, what's been on my mind lately, especially with last, I think, ones we were talking about, was Hero Factory in general. Because I don't think we've actually in-depth talked about Hero Factory on the channel yet. We've mentioned in passing.
We talked about a lot to each other, so it's hard to really recall.
But I don't think we've had one where we talked about Hero Factory. Yeah, no. I do know we had a conversation fairly recently off the channel, off the camera about it. And for me, I've realized that Hero Factory fits into a very weird level of what's it called? My way of how I like it. What's my opinion? For me, there's very different themes. There are LEGO themes that I collect and I want and I don't break. You got your Power Miners, your M-Tron, your Bionicle, your Pharaoh's Quest,
Anything from the 90s.
Okay, Pharaoh's Quest actually did break most of them, so that's actually not a good example. Wolfpack. There's certain, it's really older themes where it's I have them and I don't break them. See, all my Aquazone stuff. And then there's the themes, that you don't care about at all. For me, that would be most licensed sets. I don't really care about the sets in general. Friends, I don't care about actually having them built. Those are just parts packs. Same thing with any Technic set I get. Sure, they're cool. I'll build them. But they're always going to end up being bonkel parts packs. And then there's the middle ground themes. The themes that I like. And I kind of want to collect. I want to get all the characters. But I don't care enough to keep them built. These would be, again, my Pharaoh's Quest, now that I actually realize that I broke most of them. My Nexo Knights. I would say my Pirates. And then Hero Factory. Because I do really like Hero Factory. And I would love to have, the full team and such. But I don't like it enough that I'm not willing to break it. Because at some point I did break all my Hero Factory sets for parts.
I keep a few build, the ones that really I like, but for the most part, Hero Factory, I have grown an appreciation for its story and all that. It's mostly just parts to me, and I attribute this to the fact that I'm a Bionicle fan, so to me they're just mostly extensions of what I could build up with my Bionicle parts.
They are parts packs, essentially.
And I would say Hero Factory suffers greatly from the fact that it was released so quickly after Bionicle that any love I could have acquired for it came much later on.
There's a hint of sour. There's basically a soured, lingering flavor.
I was still lamenting the loss of Bionicle when they gave us this new, cheaper looking theme.
Let's be honest. Hero Factory is the Sour Patch Kids of Lego themes. You know, no matter how much you like it, it's always going to be sour in your mouth. You're just going to have to always have that recoil of. Now, don't get me wrong. Also, in hindsight and such, we know that Hero Factory wasn't the. Bionicle didn't move out of the way for Hero Factory. Hero Factory was a filler.
Pretty much.
It was, created to only be, I think, 3 years, as typical Lego themes is. It was meant to introduce a new building system. It got popular enough that it lasted a couple extra years. And then once it was gone, Bionicle came back, And I think that was pretty much the plan from day one, from what I've heard, is that Hero Factory is meant to kind of, usher in the new building system, and just kind of be something to hold you off while they reworked Bionicle.
And certainly on trying to keep budget more in mind, they are definitely much more budgetable because they have a selection of armors of various sizes that they will just basically circle through and they won't have to worry about changing the colors.
And honestly, the fact that they use that style of build essentially for 4 full waves in a row, because I'm not counting the last wave, which even technically 5 waves if you count the mech one, and they really didn't introduce. They had introduced maybe 2 or 3 new armors away, but they were still using all the armors from essentially the Ordeal of Fire one, which introduced the CCBS system.
Pretty much, other than occasionally.
The only thing I wish they had introduced better, because they cycled through 3 different heads, I think, or something, but the one thing they should have redesigned was the foot.
Yes.
I have never liked the Hero Factory foot. Don't get me wrong. It works great for Star Wars figures. It looks good on most Hero Factory figures. And honestly, in certain characters of Bionicle, it doesn't look bad, but I just find it's very awkward.
I also find it oddly rocky in design.
Well, it's meant to match the angular shape of Hero Factory armor, but also be the shape of a foot. So it's trying to do 2 different things, and yeah, in fact that Gen 2 Bionicle also used it, and I think, I don't know, that's probably the piece of the Hero Factory I dislike the most outside of the CCBS style head from Ordeal of Fire and Savage Planet. I like the customizable ability where they all have the same helmet piece and different goggles and visors. I liked that concept, but the heads by themselves look so bad.
Well, I think the problem is you can't leave the head by itself. Even a Glatorian head, while transparent, you can leave without a helmet. It's got a full head.
It doesn't look like you did a lobotomy on the head.
Whereas in the Hero Factory heads, unfortunately, you can't even take the goggles off.
What I'm annoyed about that headpiece, though, is it's got 2, stick connections on the top, right?
Yes.
Standard Hero Factory design. Marihuki's mask has 2 hole connections on the head. They don't quite line up. You can't quite put a Huki's mask on that Hero Factory head, and that's always bothered me. It's such a small little thing, but it's so
the
close.
Compatibility of Hero Factory with Bionicle has always been a point of contention. Sure, it's very ball and socket heavy, but wherever there should have been where there would have been an axle with a Bionicle part, there is a pinhole.
Not even a pinhole, but the stick hole.
Sorry, stick hole.
A little stickle.
A bar hole.
I need to get a proper term, I'm sure there's some measurement where it's 2 millimeter hole or something like that, but
it'd be 3 millimeter.
3 mil.
Because the 3 millimeter hoses out eye for train, so I'm pretty sure a standard bar
3
would be 3
millimeter.
mil.
I just call them Lego stick holes. And don't get me wrong, that choice in Hero Factory does make it a way better for compatibility with system. Because there's been many Hero Factory sets that use either spears or other kind of random parts from Lego, and it does make using system stuff meld better, and I would say CCBS does blend with the system well, because there's been plenty of Ninjago mechs back in the day that used Hero Factory limbs and such, and for the most part looked pretty good, looked fine. It was a lot more flush and flat like actual Lego parts were. But That's just the building system, but and overall, my bigger problem with Hero Factory, looking back, is not the build. It's not even the fact that it took over the Barnacle. It was more so that the story just felt very inconsistent about how much you wanted to connect with one another. Because for those who don't know, Hero Factory did have every wave of Hero Factory had its own like TV special or a couple like 2 or 4 episodes. I'm not sure they're TV specials, but they all had, a TV show for it essentially.
Indeed. And the first one, well, honestly, it had layers. The way they were building up to the final duel with the Von Nebulon. It's a charming one. Nothing too fancy.
Rise of the Rookies was good.
Rise of the Rookies.
I do think it had, did basic world building, but it did make the one thing that it did do well and bad at the same time was the hero core concept, where it's like you could drain through your core, which I liked it, but I kind of felt like they drained through cores too quickly at times, where I'm like, you really suck at being in a combat situation that's longer than like a couple hours. Which is
also kind of hilarious, because
now it's possible they
never brought Core Hunter into the show when they came around to doing the 3rd, 4th season.
See, I don't mind the idea of the cores draining, because I think it does nerf the heroes a little bit. Like, it's a powerful, asset to have, but you kind of have to, use it wisely, I guess.
Yes.
And kind of and that's not a bad concept, but I think the show was never very good at showing that it did last a while, and maybe, to me, it just felt like it didn't last long enough on a basic,
and then, of course,
combat.
Ordeal of Fire, I think probably one of the best, kind of, to me, feels like it's missing a first episode. It feels like, it doesn't feel disconnected from the original, because I think we see him change into their new forms.
That was the nice thing of Ordeal of Fire. It did go from one to the other quite nicely.
And then there's nothing wrong with Savage Planet.
It's basic. This is the thing about Savage Planet compared to the other ones. You're on one planet, and that's where they are. They're in one place almost the whole time.
But then Breakout came out. And while Breakout is arguably my favorite one as a whole, it does have some missed opportunities, and that's definitely where character personalities started to shift. Like, Nex and Evo are nothing like they were introduced in Ordeal of Fire.
Well, Nex was in Savage Planet as well, but I think Nex was pretty much the same through all of them. He was always kind of a bit more... Evo was the big change. He went from being the silent martial arts ninja type to being a noob.
A noob.
But not even a cool noob, just a boring noob.
He became the new
A boring white boy noob. Essentially the best way to describe him. The thing about, Breakout was, it was fine. Everything, it still connected with the rest, brought Rocco in, it felt like it was a natural progression, and you saw old villains, like, at least in the jail, they didn't really do anything, but you saw them, and at the very end, I mean, the whole thing is, it's breaking out, trying to get Von Nebula's staff, helps break everyone out, right? So, for any person who's been following Hero Factory at this point, you're thinking to bring back Von Nebula next wave. Like, he's going to be the big bad. At the end of the episode, you see his hand basically, acts as a computer.
You see the hints that it's him.
But then everything just, like, any sort of, like, continuity just kind of
hard reset.
Like, it didn't reset with Brain Attack fully, because the idea that the plans of the Hero Factory got out did still technically connect to it, but then it wasn't Von Nebula who had it. It was just some other random villain, and it was just like... It's like the people in charge of Hero Factory really wanted to bring back Von Nebula. They had this plan to bring him back, but somewhere either that Lego or they different people, they just all of a sudden decided... Maybe they realized the sales were going down, so it'd be best not to make the same mistake of Bionicle by having things get too convoluted for fans, and so they decide... let's just kind of do the episode a week sort of thing, light connections, but let's just tone it back because we don't want to lose new fans and hopefully get those sales back up.
I could see them doing that.
And then the last wave we all know with the Beast from Below, that I would say is not a continuation in the slightest. It's just another Hero Factory wave.
I know I've seen part of it, but I'm not even sure if I've watched the full full series with that one.
Like, I do know, at least with the show, like, the animation looked a bit differently. They changed the character models to match more the toy. All the voice actors did not come back, and pretty much that last wave, I just like to say, is like, it's not a continuation of the story, it's only just another Hero Factory wave. The same way that you'd make a new, like, adventure theme wave. It's not connected in any sort of chronological order, it's just another adventure wave, you know?
Yeah.
It's just there. Same characters, just, but it's not, like, connected by story. And definitely looking back at, like, overall, it's like, I haven't seen any of these probably in, like, years. I think I might have watched Rise of the Rookies once in the last, like, 4 years, and everything else I haven't.
It's been a while since I've watched any of it myself.
But, despite Hero Factory never being, like, also as cool as Bonkel Might for us, and always having a sour taste, we did buy a lot of Hero Factory.
They were quite affordable.
And I think for a while we had a hard time admitting actually how much we liked it. Like, we always liked it and such, but we always also made fun of it.
I don't have a problems ever thinking I dislike. Well, initially I know, but like after the first wave, because I got like one villain I got for Christmas. I always liked Von Nebula.
The first wave had,
but by the second wave, I was sold at least on the visuals of them.
See, I always liked the first wave visually more than the second wave when I was younger, because it was more Bioclass. Though I did notice that the villains looked very skimpy, like very cheap on parts, which they kind of were. The second wave, I remember thinking that, okay, they look pretty good, but Titans didn't look good. Like
CCBS or
now,
the
now,
Hero
don't get me
Factory
wrong.
building system does not lend itself to larger scale builds well.
Well, with the Fire Lord, I don't know if it was just the way he was built or all the colors they used that made him look extra messy.
He is somewhat muddled in
But
colors.
the thing is, though, is he's almost the exact same design as Black Phantom, and Black Phantom looks great. Add a couple extra pieces on, like add 2 extra pieces on the leg armor, you know, to cover that up a little bit. Get the colors cleaned up, you know, and boom, you know, you got something 10 to that. And Breakout, to me specifically, is the peak of Hero Factory. It was the peak of the story, you know, where everything was at that point still felt connected. It was finally ramping up to bring back the bad, you know, the big bad before, you know. It felt like it had much higher stakes. The sets were, in my opinion, like...
Breakout had the peak of sets.
Well,
the heroes
what I liked about Breakout is they brought back some of the helmet molds from year 1 with, like, Inferno and, like, Stormer. But then you got Rocco and Evo who had, like...
basically first wave versions of their...
for people who didn't have it, so I really liked that. And just the general... the villains, like Core Hunter, Voltix, Speed Demon, those are, like... and Black Phantom, like, those were all great sets. And even, like, the lesser villains, like, the Waspix? Thornax?
Something.
Whatever that one is, and even the shark one. Jawbreak? No. Breakjaw? Jawbreaker?
Breakjaw is the...
Sharkjaw? Whatever the shark name was. Yeah, they're the budget ones, the cheaper ones. But they were fun. And I really specifically remember also thinking about the shark one is Furno. His, like, scuba kind of outfit. I just remember really liking how that looked.
I really wanted Breeze, and I got
also Stringer with his bigger gun look.
I really wanted...
oh, Breeze, dude.
Stringer. I got him. I really wanted...
Stormer was the only one I didn't want.
Who's the gold one again?
Rocco.
And I got him. Like, I liked them. I got Core Hunter. He was cool.
I got Surge and Furno.
I think the villains, this was definitely the best batch of villains.
It's like, I would say, they're on par with the first wave. I would say on par with the first wave for, like, characterness, how they feel being unique and different. Oh yeah, and then Split Face, yeah. That was cool.
The weakest of the villains, I would say, but still a solid one.
And also, just on a side note, Lego.com also had, like, a small, like, they had a game for Breakout. It wasn't a great quality game, you know, it was buggy, it was very clunky, buggy. But I remember really liking that. That was fun. For me, that made, like...
honestly, if I had, a proper video game kind of like that, that would have been kind of fun.
But, like, That is when they also started putting stuff on the back of like the heroes, like a foot or something, just to cover it up.
The bulb come up a little.
And they got a couple new armor pieces, like shoulder pauldron kind of plates, like on Black Phantom and Voltac. And even then, even like Speed Demon with his bike. It was the first time they had a vehicle since year 1. And for me personally, they brought purple into the full front. So for those who wanted more colors. And even the chest piece that came out that year with like the more abs to it.
Yep.
And that was really cool. And they finally had actual hero cores that were perfectly round.
Yes.
Because they didn't have like, the first wave had like this whole core with an extension. Not like the show had. Year 2, closer but not perfectly round. But this one was perfectly round. And they even had a character, Core Hunter. And I think, didn't the villains have cores too? Like for codes on them? I think they
Possibly.
I think they did, which I liked, because that means if you had Core Hunter, you could just give him all those extra cores, hero cores.
Indeed.
And I was just, the character of Core Hunter, the concept of him, the picture of him, always was so cool that I wish he was in.
Given, like, Core Hunter would have worked well, especially when you think in the first year they established hero cores and how important it is, and then 3 years later they have a villain, Core Hunter. He's not even in the show. And I would say that's probably the weakest thing about Breakout is the villains all break out, which is big epic, and then it's basically I think we get like 4 of the heroes attempting to get him. We show them failing, and then we just show them.
And then you show them
wraps up really fast.
I mean, unfortunately, I would say Breakout had
it didn't build
bigger
up to
aspirations than the budget for the show had, because also they were only given the 2-episode show like all the others did, essentially. Yes. And unfortunately, they probably just had too much plan, which is why. But though, at least they had a couple books, I think, around that time. They had the online game, and there wasn't enough stuff that you at least got some semblance of it. Did wrap up quickly.
If I were to make a single change, ignoring the Von Nebula bit, I would have actually made Core Hunter the core villain there. Like, there's all these other villains we're picking together, but there's this one villain who's a little more nasty than the rest.
See,
Core Hunter.
See, I'm already liking this idea, because imagine his plan is, he breaks everyone out. Everyone's getting run,
thin.
Like thin, right? So they're not only, only impaired, like anybody runs by 1, but they're all working extra hard, which means easy pickings for cores. Like, everyone's basically running overtime. They're all like,
it could still be Von Nebula staff that releases them, but just in the recently the fray, Core Hunter is becoming like the ultimate villain because I don't remember, the heroes are all spread thin, and he's like, we've been fighting him. Core Hunter's been picking us.
I mean, Black Phantom was cool, but there really wasn't much to him besides looking cool, being voiced by Mark Hamill, and being, I would say, a slightly more competent villain than the last previous years.
I kind of actually like what you think about it. He really is just a right-hand man. He is the person the boss sends in to get things done. Like, you don't actually get the vibe that he's the boss.
No, he very much feels like he's working there for Von Nebula or someone else.
He feels more like a bounty hunter, like he was paid to go in there and do that.
Although, I will say, again, I haven't seen that in a long time, so maybe he's a little bit cooler than I remember, but I don't remember. The fact that I'm not remembering anything specific, doesn't say much for the most part. So, but definitely I would say that was the year, and that was also the same year that I also decided that building with Hero Factory could be fun. Because at that point I had I would say half a dozen, the ones of the new style. And the one thing I learned that I really liked with Hero Factory was I could break them all, build a bunch of mocks, have a bit of fun, and then put them all back together really quickly and easily. And I think that is one place where CCBS and Hero Factory excelled at more than anything recent, is that it very much encouraged the build, make your own stuff, just swap out parts, which was exemplified in that same year or the year before with the Hero Recon thing, where you could go on Lego.com and make your own hero and get that shipped to you. Now, it was a little expensive, and so we never did it. Don't get me wrong, I still want to make James Flamesburn. I have the image, but the fact that the Lego gave you the option to make your own custom hero as an option, and then just to me, it was really cool. I mean, it was only just the same. There was no unique colors of parts or anything. And it was mostly just parts from the first, like, the second year. So I think it was, I don't know, Hero Recon. Yeah, Hero Recon was year 4 because that's when Rocco reveals that he's part of the Hero Recon.
Hero Recon, yeah, was part of Breakout.
And honestly, I think the Hero Recon was one thing that Lego almost hit the mark with. Because as far as I'm aware of, not a lot of people bought Hero Recon like sets because they were more expensive. And I feel like a lot of people didn't. But the idea of Hero Recon, to me, just like, I don't know how they would have done much better, but like, it's so, I feel like, to me, it just seemed really like, that was the moment I looked at as like, okay, Hero Factory's got some other cool stuff. Maybe we'll be seeing new characters, new teams, you know, not like Alpha One or, you know, the Rookies team. I was hoping to kind of see something more, you know, different.
Yeah.
But I mean, mostly Hero Recon was meant was that you build your own hero, you do your own stories. They're in the same universe, but it's all you. It's very much the builder's focus, which is, you know, cool, and you can make your own villains and all that. But like I said, I think the price point definitely hurt. But again, it was the same thing as Lego Factory, which also I don't think only lasted for a few, like, maybe 5 years at most.
Yeah. The build your own creation things don't really stick around too long.
The only time that's ever been successful is Build-A-Fig at Lego stores, essentially. I think it's the only time that sort of program has, like, worked. But again, it's all at smaller scale, it's just a few parts. But like I said, the fact that Hero Factory, I would say, really made it easy just to get into building. Because I would say it was an easier system to get the hang of than Bionicle. Because the sets were all built pretty much the same way. Like, it was less technique-based.
You could actually argue it's more complicated for a new builder because all the parts look the same.
Well, okay, let's do it this way. If you're a kid, like 8, right? And you want to make something look good, it's easier doing it with Hero Factory. Because all you need to do is really match up the color of armor and such. But to make something look good and be more complex about it, I would say it's harder because Bionicle lends more to technique, while Hero Factory was very much its own system that really didn't rely on technique much. And the only, although if you really want to think about times that system really got its stride at just a little bit too late. And honestly, I would be okay. I don't know if Lego will ever bring back Hero Factory. I don't think it will. But if they ever did,
I could see them bringing it back as a minifig line.
That would be...
And then they would actually be able to have, like, Hero Factory itself. They could have...
yes, the bootleg Iron Man sets.
They could actually have jets that could have the whole team in.
Oh, yeah, that was another thing. Right, that reminds me. One of the coolest things about the Hero Factory sets was the dropship, which Hero Factory brought back the use of the canister, which Bionicle hadn't really done to that degree since 2004.
Yeah, they made the canister basically personal little shuttles.
Which they kept that in every series, I believe you would still see that same shuttle. And the dropship could pick up one.
And in story, it would carry several. But
the fact that it could carry one and made you used to those canisters. And they kept the same shape design of canisters for the first 3 years.
And then they got rid of canisters, I think.
But they went to bags, basically, for it. But the fact that they kept the same can design for the first 3 years, despite designs of the characters being different, all compatible with the ship, and still all having story relevance, was generally, I think, just a really good idea. And was something that I definitely very much appreciated from it, because I like uses for canisters. I think it's a cool idea to make the packaging, you know, have a purpose.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was definitely very nice. And honestly, I think the biggest complaint I always had at Hero Factory was just, let's be honest, it came down to 3 things. It was replacing Bionicle, it was a new system, and to me the shows always felt just a little bit more...
childish.
They felt like they were for a slightly younger age group than Bionicle was, which I think they were. I think they were targeted a couple years...
as a theme felt like it was very much targeted at a younger demographic.
But I think that was intentional because they didn't want to have a deep lore to it. They were just like, you know, we're going to do a simpler thing. Basically, you know, Hero Factory felt like it was much more for, you know, pre-teens. And Bionicle was for teens.
It was definitely a much more simplistic story, though I do feel that they could have done more with it. You know, you don't have to be, like, deep lore to have a
There's really
engaging story.
Outside of, like, Stormer having to get, used. Basically, every wave there was one character who had character development, it seemed like. The first one was mostly Stormer having to accept the rookies.
I would say Inferno also had, like, we're just going to call it the maturing arc.
Yeah, even then, that was, like, way more basic than normal. They didn't make him annoying. That's the thing. They didn't make him annoying rookie. They just made him a rookie. And then also, Savage Planet, Rocco had to kind of, be the new Inferno. Inferno had to get used to having Rocco around. Because Rocco was now the new hotshot, which, like I said, there's some character development. But honestly, Stormer's whole thing of basically accepting what happened with Von Nebula, learning to trust other people again, and just kind of team up. Like, it was good. The first one was just good. But, unfortunately, we have reached that 30-minute mark. So, and I do feel like, unless you have any other final things that you want to...
No, I'm quite good for today.
I think we covered, we covered the show, we covered the sets, we covered the story, we covered games, general vibes. So, I would say overall, I would put Hero Factory as, it's not one of Lego's greatest teams, but the fact that look at this way, it lasted 6 waves, 6 years. That ain't bad. That's much more than, like, almost any of their other 3-year week. Not very many Lego themes make it past the 3-year initiative. So, to Hero Factory, I'd give you a 1.5 thumbs up, a tip of the hat, and a gold cookie. You can't eat the cookie.
A gold cookie?
You can't
eat
it.
Like just a standard cookie.
Well, I want to eat a cookie if I want to win something, but you can't get it. But anyways, I've been your host Onvermel. This has been the T.O.A. Podcast, and we are retiring from the night.